Hi, welcome back. In this session, I'm going to build a Flask API which is going to act as a backend to our application. And this Flask API will perform the user authentication and also provide you server data. So when frontend tries to get access or perform any CRUD operations, it will access this API, and this API will have few endpoints that performs all the CRUD operations. So let's go ahead and start building the code. This will be a very simple Flask application. For this app, we have to use database, which I already explained in my intro video. Since I'm using SQLDB, I need few libraries that can support with the MySQL DB. So I'm using Flask SQLalchemy and Flask Marshmallow, which will help me to connect to DB and perform the operations. Let's go ahead and import the libraries. I have already built the code and I will post all the code in the GitHub, so I won't be writing the code on the video. I will only explain the code and how it is built. So we have imported two libraries, which is Flask SQLalchemy and Flask Marshmallow. I'm using PyCharm, and I believe you all are aware of how to import the libraries inside the PyCharm. If you are not aware of the tool, you can let me know, and I will create another video session how to operate the tool and how to use the tool. After we import the libraries, we need to configure the Flask SQLalchemy in order to connect to the DB. The configuration would be adding where the DB address is and also adding the DB to the app. Those steps should be available on the official documentation website on the Flask SQLalchemy or Flask Marshmallow. The configuration for the SQLalchemy will be in the similar way. I just use the basic stuff from the website from the document, which I don't need anything extra. I'm just pointing the MySQL server address with the username and password and my schema. I did stop tracking the modifications because at this moment I don't need it, so I'm just setting it to false. If you don't set it to false, by default it will be true and it will track the modifications. So since I don't need them, I made it as false. So now we configured the SQLalchemy, and also we added the Marshmallow and SQLalchemy to the Flask app by stating these two commands, and now we are ready to build connections to the DB. So to build connections to DB, we need two things. One is models and the other one is schema. In the model, you'll define all the columns of the table. If you want to create a new table, then you need a model. Or if you want to update the table, you need a model. So for each table, I'm going to create a model and a schema. The schema is used to set the Flask query according to the SQLalchemy query in this code. So that's the only reason why I use schema over here. But you don't need schema in order to create a table or to update a table. Since I'm using Marshmallow, which makes it simple to adjust the query that I'm sending from Flask to SQLDB with the column names or the column values. That would be like fairly simple. Let's take, I have two tables in the app in the DB. So one is for the user info, and the other one is for the roles. The roles table consists of the kind of roles that users should have, and user table will have the user information, and these two are connected in a relational base. So one-to-many relationship is been built between those two. So this is the user table model, and the role table model is this one. So this is a role table model. So now I have created two models for two tables, and I should add now schemas for those tables in order to sync the model. So now this is a schema for the user info model, and this is schema for role model. When we are trying to call a schema on your logic, you cannot call it directly. So in order to call schema, I define a variable and then I converted the class into the variable. So now when I call this variable, that variable does have the data of the class and it can do the operation. And the same way this one, and when it comes to users, that's only for a single query. Like if you are trying to perform a single record query, then you can use this one. But if you want to do a query for multiple records, then you need to mention that in the class when you define a variable saying many equals true, which will identify as that you are trying to query many records for the Marshmallow. This is all defined for the sake of Marshmallow. It will be available on the website on the Flask_Marshmallow documentation. So I save this. So now we have built the model schema and everything, all the stuff for the DB. And now let's go ahead and create few endpoints. This is the endpoint for the login. We will receive the data in the form of JSON. We need a library for the request. Let me go ahead and import. So now we need a request library and also bcrypt, and the bcrypt is a library that provides authentication facility, and this is very this will encrypt the passwords and check the passwords in the DB. So this logic states like, first we are trying to create a variable for email and password. The variable will be in the format of JSON, and we are extracting the email from the JSON data that we get and password. After we receive the data, we are trying to check whether it is an email or not, a password or not. Let's say if it is not an email, then we have to throw an error. So the error would be like return missing email with a 400. And if it is not a password, then we are returning error saying missing password with the same 400. And after that, if these two are not satisfied, then we are going to check the user and see available in our user info table or not. For that, we need to send a query to the DB. So we are doing is user info table model and query filter by email dot first. So the first is like it checks for the first column in the table. In my table, email would be in the first, so I used first. So now this is going to check the email address in the table and return. And if the user is available, if the email is available in the table, then it will go for the further. If not, then it will throw an error saying user not found with a 404. If the email address is available in the table, the bcrypt is going to check the password, encoding the password to the UTF-8 because I create the passwords in the form of UTF-8 format in the DB. So yeah, it checks for similar way for the UTF-8, and after it checks for password and validates, then it is going to find the role for the user. So this is how it checks the role. So user info query with entities, role.name and all. Role.name is what I have given in my role table. Name is the column in the role table. Role is a table and name is the column. I am filtering it through this. It gets the type of role the user has. Then I'm trying to create a JSON format variable in order to return the fetched role from the user, and that is returned through access token or refresh token. So the access token and refresh token are in the form of JWT. I need to import Flask extended JWT. Flask extended JWT library provides the JWT authentication. So I also implemented the JWT authentication as well. So the access token and refresh token are being created over here after the user gets authenticated using bcrypt. So when the access token or the refresh token is created, we need to insert data into the body of the token so that when the front end can use it or extract it. So to verify, so what I'm going to insert in it would be identity, email, and additional claims. The additional claims will consist of roles or any other stuff that the user the email consists of. Yeah. So the same thing for the refresh token, and then return JSONify. JSONify is nothing but JSON format data. So now I have imported JSONify library as well. And so when we return the data, it is returned in the form of JSON format, access token, refresh token, and 200. If the user is available but the password is not authenticated, is not verified, then it throws a wrong password. If there is any internal error except these two errors inside the server, then it is going to throw an exceptional error saying provide an email or password with the 400. So this is the logging authentication I built, and now let's go ahead and test it. Okay, so now I have turned on the server. Let me go ahead and check on the postman. I open postman, and yeah, this is the login URL. And when it comes to headers, I don't have anything. In the body, I already created username and password, so this is it. And let me send and see what the response is. Okay, so I get an error saying JWT manager with the Flask application. So I'm getting some kind of error. Okay, so this error is because of my interpreter. My Python interpreter is in virtual environment, and the Flask SQLalchemy is throwing an error when we run our interpreter through a virtual environment. So I'm using my Python interpreter, which is running on my machine. So I'm not going to use my virtual environment Python interpreter. I'm using my system global interpreter. Okay, so now everything looks good. I need to check and see if there are any missing libraries. Okay, so let me restart the server again. So let's again try. Okay, this is throwing an error stating you must initialize JWT manager with the Flask application before using it. So that's correct. Yeah, I did not initialize the JWT manager. We have to do that, so that's very simple. It's like okay, JWT manager, and that's going to be over here. So for the JWT we have some configuration to do, and that's like pointing out yeah, that's like pointing how long, yeah, setting the secret key and setting access token expiration time and propagation assumption error. Yeah, you know what, I will take this off. We don't need this at this moment. And the time delta, yeah, setting access token expiration is also not needed, but by default I think access token would be 15 minutes or 30 minutes. But you can, if you want to change the time, and if you want to know what exactly the how long the access token you want to set it to, then you can go and use this config. But yeah, for now I'm using it as for 30 seconds because I want to test my refresh token as well. So yeah, this says an error. Let me check. I guess it is a library that I need to fix. Yeah. Okay, so now I have imported the necessary libraries. So let me restart it again and we'll try it again. Okay, so all right, so now it's successful. So now if you see, we have access token and refresh token. Okay, so we are getting two tokens, so which is good. So now we are successfully performed the user authentication system in the Flask API. And now let's go ahead and also add few couple more endpoints so that the user can get some data. Okay, so okay, so we finished the login, and the other two endpoints that I would add is like a user list that has list of the users in the DB and individual user list as well. You know what? Let's only use one endpoint that provides the complete list of users. So that would be at app.route. So type of methods it is going to use is just get. So let's say all records, and so yeah, so for that, just for the all records, yeah, I'm going to pull the data from user info table. So let's use the table and then perform query dot all. So I'm just pulling all the records on the table, and now I'm storing that as a result variable saying user schema, because the marshaller should know that we are pulling all the tables, I mean all the records in a single query. So I dump it on all, oh sorry, yeah, I dump it on that, I dump the all records on this, okay, on this variable. So now we can return this variable saying in the form of JSONify, right, let's say it's an object, and now say submitted, yeah, submitted data would be result. Yeah, so this way how we can pull the records using query on the DB and return it as written in the form of JSON. Okay, so now we have one endpoint. I will create another endpoint that can pull current logged in user info, like the email address and the role the user has. So since those two can be accessed from the access token or the user identity from the JWT manager, so I will do that. So this is also going to be same, a similar way, but let's say current user equals get JWT identity, yeah, identity, and this need to be down imported, yeah. And after that, for the sake of role, we need to check what I need to check inside the current inside the user additional claims, because we are providing the role in the additional claims. So that for role in X, for role in the current user additional claims, the role X equals role, and if X equals user, so returning a success message. Yeah, so now if else, return insufficient roles. There is some additional thing that I have done here, yeah, that is like it's going to check if the user has a role named user, then it is going to get the data and display it and return it. If the user doesn't have that role, then it is not going to validate it and don't return the data. So say it says return the roles insufficient. So now let's go ahead and try this one and see what we get. Okay, so I have this access token. Okay, I'll try with the user first with the user list. Okay, so now I'm getting all the user list data, and the same thing. Okay, for the home I need to insert the role, but at this moment, yeah, I will show it on the front end. Yeah, on the front end using view. So when I build the front end, then I will add the role to it, and we will check. Yeah, we will see if the user has it. Okay, so I think at this point we are successfully implemented the backend API. So we have built everything what we needed in the backend using Flask. But when it comes to sending data, the other thing I forgot to implement is an endpoint for the refresh token. Since our access token is going to expire in 30 seconds, then each time our front end makes a request, it is not going to validate because the token got expired and server won't authenticate. In order to get a new access token, we have refresh token in our body. So we will use this refresh token and get a new access token. Even that is very simple, that Flask JWT extended does provide an endpoint for refreshing the token as well. So for that, we will use this. So this will provide, yeah, this will provide the new access token for the refresh token that you sent. Like, so when the user gets a 404 or 401 error, then it uses the refresh token and send the request to get a new access token. So when we get a request, we check for the identity and see if the identity is valid. Then it will create a new access token and include it in the identity, and then return it back as an access token to the request. For this endpoint to work, it needs a decorator saying at JWT underscore required refresh token equals true. If you don't use this refresh token equals true, then it is going to check by default only the access token. For every request for this endpoint, it is going to check for the access token, not the refresh token. So when you mention that saying refresh token true, then it is going to check it. So I think I did not download the JWT underscore required library or package. So now it did. So and it's good. When I checked earlier, I did not use the I did use the access token, but I didn't add a protected route. I didn't add a decorator saying it needs a token. So I'm going to do that now and check again. Okay, same thing for the home as well. So now these two are protected routes, and let's check again the access. Okay, let me log in again. Okay, so now I can authenticate with the access token and then get the data. So now we successfully implemented a JWT authentication system as well. So now when front-end user tries to authenticate, after the user gets authenticated, our API will return access token and refresh token. So this is it. Thank you for watching and have a great day. Bye bye.